Welcome everyone to another edition of Ask Princess. Today's topic is organic GMOs. What's that? In the news lately, well, especially in the news lately, but probably within the last 10 to 15 years, um, the food industry has had, or the food and I guess like cosmetics and all that kind of stuff has really been going through a lot of different phases, especially with like the USDA. And there has been a lot of transitioning. I'm only 33, but I remember being little. There wasn't a lot of talk of organic or foods where it was created in labs and things like that. Of course, we did have like the processed foods, like the lunch meat and you know and TV dinners, but an apple was an apple, and that's what it was. It wasn't organic, it wasn't GMO, it wasn't anything. So within the last 10 to 15 years, it's been a constant battle with like the USDA, with people believing or feeling that they've been getting sick from the foods that we've been eating, and just this movement to have better quality food all around. So this is where organic and GMOs come in, because especially within the last 5 years or so, maybe even on the GMO level, maybe 10 years ago, because you can kind of put GMOs with cloning and all that kind of stuff, these became hot topics. These have become keywords. And a lot of people are like, well, what's organic? What's the difference between organic and regular fruits and vegetables or what have you? What are GMOs? What does that mean? And so today I'm going to try to explain that a little bit. As I said, when I was little, pretty much an apple was an apple. It didn't have any particular label or any particular whatever. It was just an apple. It was apple with with vitamins and minerals, and that was it. Also, when I was little, we didn't have things, or it wasn't on the forefront, because I'm sure they were probably working on it and didn't expose it to later. But when I was little, there were not things like GMOs or cloned meat. I'm sure some of you who are old enough remember when they started cloning meat, and I think they were cloning sheep, and they cloned a sheep named Dolly. And so that caused a big ruckus, mainly because everyone's like, what in the world? Why are we, you know, cloning full animals? And then I think the USDA, the FDA, they kind of caused a stir because, well, yeah, FDA as well, kind of caused a stir because they actually approved the use of um, cloned meat. So basically, you could take a cow, you could clone it and clone it and clone it to make multiples of the same cow, kind of like twins, identical twins in a sense, but it's not through natural conception. So they approved the use of cloned meat, and everyone, went into hysteria, went into frenzy, because just like, what in the world is that? Like, why would you do such a thing? So let's go into I guess organic. It's a little bit simpler, a little bit happier. Um, oh no, well, maybe in that case, let's reverse it. Let's go into GMOs, because organic will make us a little bit happier after hearing about the craziness with GMOs. So GMOs, the actual GMO actually stands for genetically modified organisms, and that's just what it is. It is genetically modified. Um, as we know, we get more advanced with science, with technology. We start doing crazy stuff. Some people argue that we're playing God. Some people will argue that it is beneficial um, to maintain a proper health and growth. So really the goal of GMOs, according to like the USDA and the people who advocate the use, it is to introduce a new trait to a plant or organism which does not occur in the species. So let's go through that again. The goal of genetically modifying an organism is to introduce a new trait to plant or organism, which does not occur in the species. So just hearing that is just like, okay, if it doesn't actually occur, some people would say, well, should it even be there? What are we doing? Of course, if you think back to science, probably what, like chemistry, biology, like 8th, ninth, 10th grade, when you had to do like the little Punnett squares, and you had to crossbreed the flowers, and you had to kind of bring out the whole distinction of, well, if you have a rose and you have a dandelion and you crossbreed them, how many would come out, yeah, look more dandelion or more rose or more yellow or more red or whatever. Same thing, like if you had, the parent with the blue-eyed trait and you had a parent with the brown-eyed trait, what is the probability of coming out with, brown-eyed children versus blue-eyed children? So we kind of, that concept has already been introduced to us, where if you crossbreed genes, this is what happens. But with the GMOs, it kind of it's a little more than just crossbreeding. It's a little more than just taking two of the same species. Like if you have two different types of squash, they're both squash, but maybe you have yellow squash, and then maybe you have another type of squash, and you're crossbreeding to try to get a new type of squash. It's a little more intricate than that, because what they're actually doing is trading out genes and putting new genes in to create um, a superfood, if you will. Now, opponents of this call it frankenfood, because it's just like you are basically changing the species of this food. I mean, even though it may still appear to be corn, or it still may appear to be a squash, or whatever, it does not have the classic typical traits of this fruit or vegetable, what have you. People who support it, they say that it's good because when it comes to food, especially if you're using this food, maybe to feed the poor, or you need an abundance to maintain the supply and demand, this can be a good thing, because it can create a species without, say, certain illnesses that is prone to that species, or certain diseases. It can help certain foods resist that. We've all seen, or we've heard stories of farmers, or if you had your own little garden, where maybe your tomatoes were attacked by some type of disease that's tomatoes are prone to, or corn, or watermelon, or squash, or cucumbers. And what happens with GMOs, they play around with the genetic makeup of these fruits and vegetables to prevent that disease from attacking it. So you have supporters who say, well, look, lately we've been, certain produce have been coming down with these diseases that are prone to the plants. And with this, we can avoid that, so that farmers and local growers can grow foods without having worry about them being diseased or the crops being ruined, etc. But the proponents of this, um, people who oppose this, are just like, really, are you serious? It's nature. If so be it, if it happens to get the plague of a disease, then that's just what it is. We should not be playing around with nature and changing genetic makeup, because in the long run, we do not know what or how that would affect us from eating this genetically modified um, food. And then you can kind of equate it to like those movies where like the parents had genetically changed maybe their kids, or like there's movies where kids are cloned, and they start off all sweet and innocent, and then next thing you know, they're like running around killing people. Not saying that you're going to start killing people from eating GMO food, but the concept is the same. A lot of people who oppose GMOs believe in the beginning it's going to start off as a basic okay idea, not necessarily thrilled about it, but starts as a basic okay idea. Your heart is in the right place type situation. And then we're going to have maybe health issues or other things that are going to affect us negatively within our bodies and within, I guess, the agricultural design altogether. So a lot of people are very against it. One of the telltale signs that you are eating GMO foods or genetically modified organisms is that, for example, when you eat an apple oxidizes and it turns brown almost immediately. Pears, you eat those, within 5 minutes, they start to turn brown. Natural occurrence. Basically, it's you've taken the outer skin off, the air has hit the flesh of the apple or the pear or whatever other organism that actually does that, and it oxidizes, and the oxygen works along with the flesh, and it starts to turn brown. That is nature. That is saying, hurry up and eat this apple, hurry up and eat this pear. With genetically modified food, you can eat the apple and sit it down and it won't turn brown. And scientists and science will say, well, that's a good thing because then you're not wasting. But those who believe that they're playing God with, food and everything says it's not a good thing because we do not know the long-term effect of having apples and pears and bananas and whatever else that will not go into their natural state of oxidation. So that's just like a telltale sign. You eat an apple next time, pay attention to it. Is it turning brown, or does it stay nice and beautiful and golden on the inside as it did when you first took your first bite? Some of the main crop species, species is such a crazy word, but in science they are species. Some of the main crops that they use GMOs for are soybeans, corn, canola, rice, and cotton. And the bigger issue with that is, it's good for, say, the farmers because especially when you have things like drought, because that's one of the things that GMOs are supposed to help combat drought. Like, so if it's a drought, it's okay; they'll still grow and be wonderful. So, so in that aspect, scientists and science are saying, look, farmer, we've been going through a drought. Our ecological systems are changing and our weather is constantly changing and it's not very favorable for the farmers. This will allow farmers to have the supply and demand that they need to have a very prosperous crop. So in that aspect, you're like, oh, okay, that's great. But again, because people do not know the long-term effects from eating these GMO foods, it raises a red flag of caution. Now you're saying, okay, soybean, corn, canola, whatever. But the thing is, soybean, corn, canola are used in oils for everything. They're used in oils for food. You buy canola oil, you buy your soybean oil. Soybean, they're also eaten because we eat corn, we eat soybeans, we eat rice. Rice is probably the biggest grain, or the biggest grain that we eat, the most plentiful grain that we eat. So you're eating tons of rice. And you can't eat soybeans as well as having it just as oils and all this kind of stuff, but it's used like in 95% of everything that we do. Whether you wear makeup, whether you eat soybean, corn, canola, all of those types of things can be found in those areas. So the big worry is, what will it do to us in the long term, in the long haul? And I also think a lot of people are just frightened in general because that's weird. It's kind of creepy. Of course, if you plant a seed, it'll grow, it'll develop, it won't necessarily be an exact twin to its origin, but it's a part of it, and people can accept that because that's life. You have a baby. The baby may look like both parents. It's not going to be an exact replica of either parent per se. but it will reflect the origin of where they came from. It will reflect something of both parents.